be able to take a staff and a group of players that mean the world to me to this place and do it on a national stage and try to compete for a national championship, that was important for me. You only have one opportunity to do this in your life, and we're not going to shy away from the moment. And we have an opportunity to be the front runner in the Pac-12 in a new conference, and I don't care what it used to be. You know, you can't get caught up in the past. You got to be looking ahead.
Welcome back, or welcome to Y Option. I am your host, Yogi Roth, as always, joined by Jim Thornby, and here we are. It's a season 1 finale. This podcast has been around for almost a decade, but this iteration of Y Option, supported by all of you, just completed, well, this is its 72nd podcast episode, I think, Jim? We've had 72 guests.
72 guests, yeah. I think we did a couple of extra ones where it was just the two, me and you, railing on some crazy topics or whatever like that. But with the ones where we've had actual guests on, this is number 72.
72. How about that? So we will reflect upon that in the afterglow after today's conversation with a very special guest presented by our founding partner, 76. Fired up for this. This is Jimmy Rodgers. For all Washington State fans, this is your coach. This is your guy. This is the new face of this program. Just spent the weekend in Seattle at a night with Cougar Athletics where I got to sit down with Jimmy Rodgers and others within the athletic department and got to just be around the fans, Jim. It was awesome getting to know him. Can't wait to share more about him. So that conversation is coming up shortly, as always, presented by 76. So proud to call them a founding partner here at Y Option. And we're going to dive into some notable topics in college football I think all of you will enjoy. So with that, Jim, I have to start with, how was your Mother's Day? Lots of love to all the moms out there, including my wife, Amy.
Yeah, it was good. My wife was my wife was actually working hard, but that was per choice as we were doing some stuff around the house. So, but yeah, we took good care of her. I made sure anything she needed, I was like, okay, we're going here, we're going there, you know, whatever. But yeah, it was a busy day here, but I saw like all the reaction coming in from your trip to Pullman, which was cool. A lot of people, like a lot of fans, you know, Yogs, you're always always be a Coug no matter what. So I imagine that had to be a very cool experience.
Dude, it was. So let's dive into that. So just kind of set the table for those that do not know this. Every college football and or athletics department, they have an event like this every offseason. In fact, they usually have multiple. A lot of them happen in the month of May, where the head coach goes around to different communities, whether it's around the country or around the state in which the school resides. And it's a fundraiser, but it's a get to know you as well. And whenever it's a first-year head coach, done this enough times, like there's a buzz, there's an excitement. So for Washington State, this is their annual event. And to Jim's point, year 10 doing this event. It's what our newsletter talks about at yoption.com as well. Like how fast time goes. I mean, Jim, I could see Mike Leach on the stage right now in vintage Mike Leach with a cocktail in one hand. He probably, was spitting something into like a paper cup in the other while holding a mic. And he's talking about a recruiting class, but really he's just telling stories.
Yeah.
And I think of those moments and the conversations afterwards, the conversations on stage. Then it was like when Nick Rolovich got there and the buzz and the quirkiness that he had that was kind of similar to Coach Leach. And then here come Jake Dickert. And he just poured into the program. And I know that there was a salty taste in Coug's mouth after he left. But I don't think that's a good thing. That's because he left a lasting impact on the program. And now here was Jimmy Rodgers. So rolling into the ballroom in year 10, the script has relatively remained the same, like in terms of the auction and the way that it goes. But the spirit and the people is what grabbed me, man. Like it was really cool to see it now with Ann McCoy as the athletics director. Obviously, Pat Chun was there for a long time, did a bunch of events when he was there. So it was beautiful. Like it was really cool to be in that environment. And then the way in which the Cougs are talking about the Pac-12 is really notable for this conversation. And again, we're going to tease our interview with Jimmy Rodgers, presented by our partner 76, keeping you on the go so you never miss a beat. And he didn't miss a beat at all. And this is not about the Cougs of past. And by that, I mean, this is not the chip on the shoulder Washington State program. This is not the, hey, they can get you in the old Pac-12. Be careful when you go to Pullman. They are very clear in their messaging of like, this is the next chapter, and we are the face of this league. And them and Oregon State are, right? Not only are they the longest tenured schools within the league, that's obvious. But when you look at the talent and who they've beaten over the course of the last, call it 20 years, I mean, it's just a different conversation, right? Because they've been in the Pac-12 at the time, the old school Pac-12. So they took down SC at home. They've won Apple Cups. Like, it's just different than what the other schools that are entering the league have done. So I like it. It's really bold. I met with the president and the AD. They were up on the panel, and they said, look, there's Power 4, there's Group of 5, and the quote was, and then there's the Pac-12 in like neon green and neon lights. And like, we can look at the Pac-12. We should look at the Pac-12 differently than any other conference because it's a relative startup and it's going to be really aggressive. And I think you've seen that with the leadership of Teresa Gould and company. And it was just cool. It was really refreshing. Like when you're sitting up there, like your juices were pumping, man. Like I got to say that from being a long tenured Pac-12 guy, now working in the Big Ten, of course, covering the country here with the Y options through the lens of the West. And you're like, okay, here come the Cougs. So react to that. And then I've got a bold prediction for where I think this team might go.
Well, it's funny that when you talk about, they're being the face, and it's almost like they're taking that flag that goes to game day every week and like putting it in the ground and being like, this is us before Boise gets into town, because you want to make sure, like, Boise obviously has a great history of success the last 25 years or however long that's the era you want to go back to, coming off the CFP last year. But it is those two schools as the face of it. And it's interesting when you look at those, to me, looking at those two schools, last year, Jake Dickert was the experienced head coach, having been at that, with that program for a few years. They had the kind of the more known quantity at quarterback with John Mateer, whereas with Oregon State, it was Trent Bray's first year as a full-time head coach. The quarterback situation was a little uncertain. And now this year, that's all. I feel like that's kind of flipped, and where you look at the portal and there's people going, right, left, in every which direction. I was looking at Washington State's roster this morning, and there was not a ton of guys whose names I recognized, just because there's been so much turnover. And I mean, I spent a lot of time last year going through Washington State's roster. So, and that's not to say that it's a worse roster than last year by any stretch of the imagination, because just because they lost these guys to the portal and brought these other guys to the portal, like that doesn't mean that these guys over here are not better than these guys over here. Yeah. So I think there's just a lot less known about Washington State this year, which is, I felt, where Oregon State was last year. So it's going to be interesting to see how Jimmy Rodgers, who seems like his staff is pretty much his staff that he had with him in South Dakota State. So at least on that realm, there was a lot of continuity there. There's not a lot of getting to know you with the staff. So I really think this is going to be a really interesting year for this program as to where they go from here.
Yeah, no, it's really compelling. So a couple thoughts on that. Let's just start with the reality of Jimmy Rodgers coming in. And for those of you watching on Pac-12 Insider, we appreciate it. Wherever you're watching this thing, whether it's YouTube or Substack, much love. And I know the Coug fans are watching this all over Pac-12 Insider as well. To that point, as I'm up on stage with him and as I'm preparing for the interview, I'm doing the following. I'm thinking, all right, over 15 years at one institution, right? He's learned a way to win, and they have won. They've won big time. Big time they've won. So there's like Kalen DeBoer kind of running around my mind a little bit. Oh, yep. Okay, there's something here about coaches who have found their way through various levels. Jake Dickert is another great example. There's a lot of coaches like that. Mike Leach, same deal. Like he didn't just launch onto the scene. Like he found his way in the coaching tree. 2, they brought on almost 20 staffers that were at the previous school with Jimmy Rodgers. They added 15 players from the previous school. They all know how to practice, how to win, how to navigate. Interesting. When you think about that, Does another team ring a bell from last year? They brought a coach who brought his staff, who brought their players. I'll help you out. I was there a couple times this year. Kurt Cignetti, Indiana.
Ah.
What did Kurt Cignetti in Indiana do this past year? They shocked the entire country.
Yeah.
The world did not expect Michigan to be down or UW to be down. The two teams that played in the national championship game a year ago, but they were, right? And here comes Indiana. And look at what they did all season long. And they found themselves into the playoff. When you look at the way the current 12-team format sits, right? I don't think we will anticipate any major changes. I think over the next couple of weeks, we'll find out if there are to the seeding, but we don't really anticipate that coming forward this season. So if you look at that one spot that went to Boise State last year, and you look at how quickly this thing could get up to speed with over 60 new players on the roster, over 70 new players on the roster. They lost 60 guys. Depart. I mean,
Crazy.
Like, think about that.
The funny thing is that you say that, like, adding 70 guys, that's becoming the norm now. Like, it's almost like not like you saw it with Colorado, we saw it at Arizona State. Like, that number is almost not as shocking as it should be.
You're right. You're right. But to the point of, like, when you just look at, like, that reality, you're right. That's not shocking. What is hard, though, is when you're Kenny Dillingham in year one and you do that, and you're Deion Sanders, Coach Prime in year one, and you do that. Like, it's hard to do if you don't have your guys. Indiana had their guys.
Yeah.
The Cougs have a version of that. And then you start looking at the schedule. Idaho, San Diego State, at North Texas. Not going to be easy. But is there any reason to believe that we don't think they can go win those games? Get the Apple Cup at home. You go to Colorado State. Okay, you go to Ole Miss. You go to UVA. Like, those are 2 weekends that, like, got to make sure you take care of yourself, because you don't have a bye for, like, you're just kind of playing through this thing. You got to play in the last four games of the season. You got to play Oregon State twice. Like, not easy, but also not manageable. Like, if Zevi Eckhouse becomes the guy for them, they've just loaded up the quarterback room in the last week, right? Hail to Pitt, Rutgers, 2 quarterbacks that come in that were backers of those 2 respective schools. I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't be shocked to see them make a little bit of noise. I'm not saying the playoff noise, but, like, if they can get on a little bit of a run, they have a shot to be a story around the country. Because I'll say it again, like, I think the country, not maybe as much as they were last year, but they're always going to be rooting for the Cougs and Beavs.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows that they got absolutely hosed in this deal. Yeah. Now, to the point I just made, Cougs aren't crying anymore. Like, they're not saying, hey, feel for us. They're saying, no, turn the page. Right. Like, we're not saying screw the teams that left us. They're saying, no, like, follow us, the teams we just added. And I love that for their branding and their marketing. But from a football standpoint, I think it's going to be a story worth tracking because of the players that had great success that came with Jimmy Rodgers.
Well, you know what's interesting is I hadn't even thought about this until you mentioned it. But getting Ole Miss when they get Ole Miss, like, if you have to go play a road game at Ole Miss, week 6 is not a bad time to be doing that. So you look at Ole Miss's schedule. Now, Ole Miss is actually coming off of a bye, which is going to be hurtful. But the game before that is they're hosting LSU. And then the week after hosting Washington State, Ole Miss goes to Georgia. So if there's any sort of, like, looking past the Cougs. Now, to his credit, Lane Kiffin knows a lot about, having to face the Cougs and what can happen with that. But it's not Jackson Dart there anymore. It's going to be that game. To me, just looking at Ole Miss's schedule is a lot more interesting than if you just would have said, oh, they have Ole Miss on their schedule. They have to go to Ole Miss this year. Like that I hate the term trap game, but, like, that has the makings of a trap game. Like, you're playing Georgia the next week. Like, your focus, it's going to be natural for these players to, like, be like, oh, we got this. We got Georgia next week. But I think Lane's history on the Palouse, even though this game is down in Oxford, I would think is actually a huge plus for Ole Miss, for him to be like, no, guys, you guys don't understand. It's different. It's different with the Cougs, man. This is not the Sentinel coming to town.
Wow, look at you in the dropping some of those random citadels and
Citadel.
yeah,
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 I didn't
Wofford.
even get the school right.
Yeah,
That's how bad
yeah.
it is.
You know what? Jimmy Rodgers is. I spent some time with him before the event. He is impressive, man. Like within 2 minutes, he's as easy to communicate as any coach that I'm around. Right? Like he's young, he's got great energy, but he's got a way about him, and you'll hear that in our conversation. He has got a very strong lens in which he views the craft. Mom was a teacher, dad was in law enforcement. The way he was raised, he's got this humbleness to him, and also, and he knows it. He's like, I get the hype of college football, but I don't really buy into it. And it'll be really interesting to watch his team in a variety of their games. But to your point on that one specifically, because what happened when Indiana went to Ohio State? They got drilled. And Kurt Signetti said, like, the noise got to us, the environment. That's a huge jump from JMU to the Horseshoe, right? It's going to be an insane jump from last year's Jimmy Rodgers players to going to Ole Miss. So, like, that'll be the psychology within the game. And I'm just so curious. Might end up going there for training camp. Y option might be going on the road. So we'll keep you posted on that as the season and training camp comes upon us. But overall, Coug fans, it was great to see you. I love all of you. Thank you for the love and support. 10 years doing this event. How lucky would I be if I got to do another 5 more? So I'm politicking to bring me back. But if you don't, I know a lot of other Cougs out there would kill it. I was up there with Michael Bumpus as well, which he was amazing too. He kind of co-hosted the thing, and he's just tracking. I know the Cougs are so proud of what he's done in his career post playing, and he's just a good dude, man. It was fun sharing the stage with him. So, all right, put a bow on that. Let's talk about somebody who made a lot of news last week.
Another good dude.
Great dude in Cameron Rising. Cameron Rising retires from football due to a hand injury. He becomes the offensive coordinator where he played at Newbury Park. I am a huge fan of Cam Rising. I want to share that in a second. Jim, I'm curious from your lens, like, what did you see from the community, whether it was on the internet or people you talked to, about the reaction to Cam saying, hey, I'm done with football?
Nothing but love, honestly. I mean, how could you not be grateful for what Cam Rising brought to you, not just to Utah, but to college football? I mean, he was one of those guys that kind of transcended just being, popular at his own school. He was one that fans of other teams, when they would watch Utah play, go, man, that dude just plays hard, and like that dude just seems to have fun and have this natural charisma. It's in a different way. It was, I think about Washington State, how Gardner Minshew was kind of like that guy, that people just gravitate to, man, just like such a likable player, to kind of really get behind. And that was really evident in that, which was good, because obviously last year was not the year anybody, Utah staff, players, fans, anybody wanted to have. And a lot of that was the vacuum of not having Cam Rising there. You felt even just watching the game on TV, you could feel the energy, from that team kind of lose itself a little bit when Cam got hurt in that Baylor game. So to have that community all kind of rally back around, kind of put what happened last year in the rearview mirror, crank up the bad moon rising, and and just be thankful for Cam and what he did, bringing the team to the Rose Bowl, the whole deal. It's just kudos to a great college career from Cam Rising.
Ready, set. Use French fries to go. Yeah, oil from French fries. Turn yesterday's leftovers into today's fuel. More power, lower emissions. 76 renewable diesel fuels all the ways you go, go, go.
Yeah, we messaged back and forth on social media, just kind of congratulating him on his storied career. And he's been one of my favorite guys. I can remember him coming out of high school. He's contributed to the book 5-Star QB, just on his path. He gave some great insight into how he not only had to navigate recruiting, but advice to parents as they navigate recruiting, because it's just a hard thing, right? There's no place to Google, how do I help my son be a walk-on or a 5-star recruit? That's why we wrote the book, the impetus of it. And he contributed to that because he was a guy who went from a 5-star to a 4-star,
Right.
which clearly that was a miss when you just look at the landscape of everything that's happened in recruiting. I have a couple thoughts on this. I want to start with one that surprised me just internally as I was thinking about it. If you go back in time when NIL began, you knew Cam Rising was going to get paid. You knew Utah is flush with resources, at least from my lens. After year one, it was like, there was always rumors, like, is he going to go to another school? Do we have to pay more? And it became a thing where I think a lot of fan bases, some in Utah, all of them around the country and we've all dealt with this of like, how do I navigate with NIL? Like, how do I feel about players getting paid so much money and then maybe being hurt? Maybe not playing at the level of expectation, maybe playing off the hook, like whatever it is. I think we've all had to navigate like the fact that it is pay for play. That's reality of football. Yeah. When he announced his retirement, my first thought was, I hope he got his. Like, I hope he, and not like in a aggressive nature, but like, I hope he got paid. Think about all of our friends or all of the friends listening. Like, when somebody gets laid off from a job, the first question is like, hey, did you get severance? Like, hey, I hope you got yours, right? And there's a negative connotation to that. But the idea is the same. Is like, you hope you maximized it while you were there, whether it led you to another job, whether it got you paid so you can rebuild your backyard and your garage, like whatever it is, like you hope you got something. And I look at Cam Rising now as a offensive coordinator in high school football, clearly not making anywhere near what he made in NIL as a starting quarterback at Utah. And I look back and I'm like, look at what he did at that school. Not I hope you got yours and you put it to everybody who was paying it in the collective, but like in my opinion, he is worthy of a conversation as the most impactful Utah football player of all time. Yeah. Of all time. I mean, I get Morgan Scalley was a great player. Of course, Alex Smith was a great player. There's a lot of great players that went to win Super Bowls, etc. Eric Weddle, he's been on this show, right? Like, I just go to what he did. Who thought when Utah joined the Pac-12 that you'd get to the title and or you'd win it and you'd be a constant in it every year, more so than Oregon, Washington, Stanford, USC. And when you face them, okay, UW, you kind of learn, right? I remember being at that game. Britton Covey hurts his knee in that ball game. Like, they lose with Tyler Huntley at quarterback, and then they come on back. They lose another heartbreaker to Oregon and Justin Herbert, and then they come on back after the pandemic, and boom, boom. And Cam Rising is the difference. Look no further than the play I'm talking about, which signifies Cam Rising and what Kyle Whittingham and Utah are all about. Gets clocked against USC, helmet pops up, and he pops up smiling with that signature wink. Let's go. I mean, that's Cam. Jim, that is Cam Rising. He led this team to back-to-back Rose Bowls, and it was horrible watching him leave both of those fields muddied and injured. Because in both of those games, you thought he was going to leave the field and in his press conference declare for the NFL. So the point is, like we say all the time on the show, the only guarantee in college football is that it is not going to go as you expected. Cam Rising went to Texas, was committed to Oklahoma. It didn't go as expected. He had to sit out at Utah while JT Daniels lawyered up and got to play after transferring. Like, he got, to me, done wrongly by the system early on. But it led him to have this storied career. And I think all of us, not only do we do what you referenced, which is shower him with love, but I think all the players now that are signing these deals in NIL, and I get it, some are out of whack, and there's no guardrails, and we'll get to that in a minute. We need to. It sounds like maybe there's a chance for that to happen. But Cam Rising's story is no different than the quarterback who gets cut after a minicamp, who gets cut after 1 year on a practice squad, and his career is done in football. Like, it's no different. So I hope that we can look at it and be like, I'm glad you got yours. You earned it, man. You earned it. You dealt with the praise. You dealt with the blame. You dealt with the criticism. You showed up on the field. You led us to unprecedented heights. Like, I just will have such a different lens on NIL moving forward. And I think I've made peace with it from watching Cam Rising have to retire. Like, I don't feel anything anymore other than, hey, let's get some adults in the room and try to help everybody. But if you sign for 1.5, good for you, bro. Because the likelihood of you signing for $40 million is slim to none after your college career. It's just the truth.
And what's cool, and before we move on to that future of the NIL, of what Cam is doing now, of going back to his high school, they've got a 4-star QB at his school. The head coach's son, who's already committed to Michigan, who, when Cam was playing there, was kind of like shadowed him like as one of the, and it's cool because that is kind of similar to like when Cam was playing at Newbury Park. Keith Smith, the former Arizona quarterback, was kind of that guy who came back and did that same thing. He was the offensive coordinator. So it was funny because I remember a couple years ago at Media Day when he was there, and I was like, hey, we got to talk about Keith Smith. And his eyes just lit up. But it was funny because it was like at the end of lunch, and like he had to go do another thing, which is funny because I'm the one who did all the schedules. So I have him so busy that I don't have time to actually talk to him about it. But it was like, that was the one conversation that hopefully someday I'll get to have that conversation with him to talk about, his relationship with Keith Smith, who, was a Newbury Park legend in high school, set all sorts of records, played at Arizona, was part of one of the greatest Arizona football teams of all time at quarterback there. And then he went back to Newbury Park and was the offensive coordinator when Cam was in high school there. So it's kind of funny how that all kind of is coming full circle in that regard. So that's always what I think about when I think of Cam, is like, damn, I still want to have that conversation about Keith Smith with him.
Oh, I love it. All right, we're efforting, try to get him on here in season 2 of Why Option. That'll be question 1. The Jim Thornby, Arizona Wildcat, pull from left field. I love that. What's going to be fun a year from now is, where will he be? Right? Like, he can do anything he wants in his life. He's so talented. Does he stay back home, which is a great life in Southern California, an amazing community, keep coaching high school football? Of course, one day you'll see him be a head coach if he wants to be. Does he take the leap to college? Does he take the leap a la Davis Webb and all of a sudden become a quarterback coach in the NFL? Like, there's a lot there. And you start looking at to your point, like the Brian Johnsons of the world, like all the people that are in the NFL that have came through Utah, whether it's Coach Whittingham's son, like it'll be compelling. And I know he'll always have an opportunity to go back to Salt Lake City. When he does, I want to be there because it's going to be a standing O, and it needs to be a long one, if not multiple. Yeah. Okay. Never thought I'd say this on our show, but President Trump might be creating a committee in college football, which you can have a lot of opinions on that. The success rate, who knows? It sounds like Nick Saban's going to be a part of that thing, and others. The reality is there needs to be governance, because if it's state to state, we've seen all of a sudden there's a lawsuit. Moving on. The House settlement, there's an update, Jim, I know you're going to provide with us there. Maybe by the time you listen to this, there's another update in that regard. But what can you tell us about the news that you probably read a little bit more than I do?
Yeah, well, and again, it's hard, and thank you to Ross Dellinger for being the being the reporter who really kind of gets this whole thing better than most of college football media. So it's kind of like internalize, contextualize it for the simpletons like myself, who just want to like, how does this actually affect us here, instead of trying to figure out all the legalese. But the judge basically told them, hey, we're not moving forward without the roster spots being grandfathered in, based on the roster limits that was coming in. And as you have spoken about in the past, like, coaches and programs are already telling guys like, hey, or guys were already, and this is not just football, this is, throughout many sports. Kids were leaving school because they knew they weren't going to have a roster spot. So now with the judge saying that, the new proposal that they're apparently going to have is addressing that, which would allow schools to kind of that are opting into the revenue sharing to kind of phase in those roster limits. You've already seen Notre Dame say that if you're already in school and on a roster at the time of the change, the school will honor the player's spot on the roster in the event that cuts to get to the limit. So it's really just kind of chaotic, because everyone kind of knows where this needs to go, but it's the path to get there. Now, I have no idea if this, presidential committee is going to help or hurt that process, because it's one of those things where they're at the quote unquote, 1 yard line. We've seen things before when people have said, "Oh, we're at the 1 yard line," and things completely fall apart. So if this comes in and be like, "Oh no, we need to do this," is that going to really just kind of blow up all the progress that's already been made, or will this be the hammer to drive that final nail into getting something done on this? Because there's just a lot of chaos right now, and schools are going to have to, figure out whether or not it's in their best interest to backtrack on all the moves that they've made in the last 6 months to get the rosters where they need to be able to be in compliance with everything. It's just a really crazy time in college sports.
Yeah. Well,
that's the simple way to kind of describe it there.
Totally. And like I said off the bat, like time goes fast. We're going to be in 2030 before you know it. Think about it. So by 2028, 2029, we're going to know. By 2027, we're going to know about the expanded playoff. By 2028, 29, you're going to have an idea of, does conference realignment happen again, right? Does it become a huge super league? I think there's always a dialogue around, like, college football's never been healthier. You see that in presentations. You hear that from people. I wouldn't agree with that. I think certain places never been healthier. I think the playoff never made college football more popular, healthier. But when I look at some of these other teams, let's just stay out west. Like, do I think Stanford and Cal are at their healthiest right now because they're in the ACC? Like, zero chance on that. And I would bet they would agree with that, right? So what's going to happen as it all moves forward? Like, what is this governance? Is it focused solely on NIL, pay for play, transfer portal craziness, coaching salaries off the hook? Like, I don't know, like, maybe it's probably not going to put a cap on coaching salaries. So then you're going to put a cap on freshman NIL, which I agree with. I've heard that from many coaches. I think it's a fair thing, because now, like, you don't have to feel the pressure to play them, which I don't think is always the best thing. But now let me be an agent for a 5-star quarterback who's going to be at the Elite 11 this summer. You're going to put a cap on me? No, like, you can't do that in fair market value. And then you have to define what is fair market value. That's the biggest issue here in NIL. Of, if we all agree on revenue sharing, which sounds like that's going to be the case, then we also have to agree on the policing of what is an NIL legal deal. Coming on Y option is not worth $100,000. Going on, Pat McAfee maybe is. I don't know. If you do that every week, someone's going to have to decide that. And there's going to be, sounds like there's going to be clear repercussions if you are void of that, right? If all of a sudden you pay somebody an astronomical amount for them not doing a lot of work, that player, that program, that coach is going to face fierce penalties. Do we really think that's going to happen? I don't know. Sure.
And also, how, the thing that we've learned over the last several years, and we've talked about this, multiple times on this podcast, is anytime a penalty comes in, the person who's being penalized will then sue the NCAA and they win. Like, so that's the other part of it, is like, unless there's, not every time, but I mean, most all the time, now we're seeing, junior college players now being able, having that not count against their eligibility and all that stuff. There's so many things that we're, again, I've told the story many times where you've seen Mick Cronin, where he was like, tell the kid to sue the NCAA. And he, it was in Foley Dante, the Oregon player, during the Pac-12 tournament 2 years ago, I guess that is now. The time goes by too fast. But he should sue to play as long as he wants. But it's going to be interesting, because, when you talk about, Nick Saban being kind of part of this committee, Nick Saban's really old school. I mean, like, what his ideas, are they going to mesh with where everything has gone so far? So, like, that's kind of where I was talking about before. Like, is that helpful to the progress of everything, or is it a left turn on everything that then will change? Yeah. So how do all these things align? Because I think that's the biggest thing, is how is getting alignment. on issues.
Yeah, I think, look, what Saban always gets praised for, and he should, which is he was able to radically adjust,
Yeah.
whether that's schematically, recruiting. Okay, now all of a sudden, now it's legal has become NIL, like always able to adjust. I would highly recommend to whoever's making this call, and I don't think anybody would push back, is get Chris Peterson involved. Get him involved. Like, get another guy who is dramatically well thought out from a different part of the country, has coached at a mid-major at Boise State to unprecedented heights, took a UW team to the CFP, is dramatically embedded in the game now, obviously in the media as well. Like, I just think it is the wisest thing you can do. I'm not saying he would want to sign up for that. I got to see him over the weekend up in Seattle. Love Chris Peterson, one of my top 3 favorite coaches of all time. Pete Carroll, David Shaw, Chris Peterson, in no particular order. Just love those humans as men. I would just urge him to do it. Because right now what we have is either, it seems like sometimes there's inconsistencies, and we don't really know. So let's just look at like what's happening at Michigan, Sharon Moore. It sounds like Michigan has said, we want to self-impose a 2-game penalty. Okay, cool. They're trying to get ahead of the NCAA, a move that many teams have done. Arizona State did the same thing, self-imposed, not go to a bowl game. Like, we've seen that. That's part of the playbook when you know something's coming down. This is all based on the Connor Stallion sign stealing scandal, which I finally watched that movie last week.
Is that the Netflix one?
Yeah, the Netflix one.
Yeah.
Speaking of Netflix, our good friends Taylor Kavanaugh and company at Blue Ox have a film coming out on May 23rd. More on that on social as we get closer. Shout out to them. But my point is that, like, the way that the NCAA has worked in the past is they would assign a committee to a case. A committee, I'm just going to go to my own scab. The committee assigned to the USC Reggie Bush case was a different committee that was assigned to the Rhett Bomar case, which is a different committee clearly assigned to the Connor Stallions case, which is a different committee to the Jim Tressel and the tattoo case with Terrell Pryor. Like, they're all just different committees. So what does that mean? There's different opinions. There's not like a Supreme Court of these justices decide. And I think that has led to inconsistencies, pushing back, zero trust to the NCAA from fans, minimal probably from those in major revenue driving sports, specifically college football, because who's driving the bus? Like, where are the consistencies? And the NCAA knows that. I mean, I'm going to go down to NACDA, which is kind of like the convention for all things college athletics, for the 2nd year in a row. I'm going to be a keynote speaker in a couple weeks in Orlando. Did it last year in Las Vegas. It's awesome. It's like the who's who. Everybody's there at every level. It is like the dopest convention for sports I've ever been to. To that point, there's so many layers to college athletics. So when you look at the thing with Michigan or with Saban and Trump and whomever else, like, there needs to be, as much as like we can light up the NFL and Roger Goodell, at least there is it seems to be a consistent way in which decisions, penalties, rules are made. Just doesn't feel that way in college football. Just doesn't feel that way.
No. And it's funny too. And I mean, like, again, this is all a reported of what Michigan's going to do. But like, if you're saying, oh, we're going to have him suspended for week 3 and week 4 against Central Michigan and then Nebraska, but not suspended for the Michigan at Oklahoma game in week 2, that almost seems like we're going to tell you what our penalty is. And if I'm the NCAA, I'm like, no. We decide what it's almost like begging for a harsher penalty by saying like, no, like, don't worry, NCAA, like we got this. Like, I'm sure, like, I'm oversimplifying, their reaction to this, and they're trying to figure out, the math on this. But just from a PR perspective, that seems like a little like, yeah, we're good. We got this.
Yeah, it's. I've always had an issue with penalties with the NCAA, because those that get penalized often aren't the ones that were part of the penalty or reap the benefits of the penalty. I never thought it was really fair that Lane Kiffin and Matt Barkley had to navigate a dramatically reduced roster and still won 10 games, and then to deal with it again the next year. Like, I get it. Like, we have kids. You have a penalty. You have to deal with the repercussions of that. There's consequences in life. So it's a bummer for those that rock the maize and blue, because the players are the ones that are going to be without their head coach. So how they navigate that, Michigan, and I mean this with, not tongue in cheek, like they have recent experience on how to navigate this.
Right.
I mean it. Like, and Sharon has been amazing to me. I will say that, like, nothing but a pro. Has is my 1 year really covering this league and going up to Ann Arbor, etc. So they'll find their way. They'll navigate their way through it. But let's just say they suspend him for the Nebraska game, as reported, or even CMU. And we know the head coach at CMU. He used to coach running backs at Stanford, right? He led Christian McCaffrey. They went to the Panthers. Like, he's a really good coach, and this is a Michigan team that presumptuously is going to be playing a freshman quarterback. So either which way, whether you look at the first two or the game 3 and 4, like, I don't look at Michigan now and I'm like, they're going to go be 4-0. Like, there's a real world where they're 2-2. There's a world where they could stub their toe in Central Michigan. All of them could surprise you. So
yeah.
We'll see. We'll see how that thing shakes out.
And to your point, Sharon Moore was not the head coach when this happened.
Even more. Yeah, exactly. Right.
He was on the staff. He was obviously, a coordinator at the time. But it's just weird that, like, it's a head coach's penalty for something that wasn't on the head coach at the time. Now, I guess it's, trying to figure out, like, well, he was this, who knows what the real story is. Like,
well, I'll just say this. Like, it's the same deal of, like, SC vacated all the wins, right? Like, that was part of it. Is Michigan going to have to do that? And then what does that even mean? Like, nobody doesn't think SC didn't win the national championship and Reggie didn't win the Heisman. Like, you're almost like, where does the NCAA learn from past decisions? Or does it matter? Like, do you do it because it's the right thing to do and you broke the rule and that's the penalty? And
that's how you, quote unquote, stop it from happening the next time, theoretically.
Okay. We are going to figuratively transition to our guest today, Jimmy Rodgers. So for all you Washington State fans, Pac-12 fans, Oregon State fans, he's got to face him twice this year, and just fans of the game of college football, I think his story is going to really resonate with you. We got to sit down at a night with Cougar Athletics. This was in front of 300 plus Washington State dignitaries, donors, alums, current athletes, former football players. I mean, it was amazing to see so many familiar faces in the room. And everybody was intrigued to hear what Jimmy Rodgers had to say. He joined me on stage, and so grateful for Washington State for capturing it and allowing us to share it today to the greater community here at Y Option, Pac-12 Insider, and many other places for a real, I felt like an intimate conversation where you can feel that Jimmy Rodgers has a vision. He understands that connection and culture are paramount to anything else. And he also believes that Washington State can do what I also believe they can do, which is win this new look Pac-12 and find themselves in the postseason, as in the college football playoff, much like we saw Boise State a year ago. So I hope you enjoy our conversation with your new head coach at Washington State, Jimmy Rodgers. As always, much love to our founding partner, 76, keeping you on the go, 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 so you never miss a beat. Jimmy Rodgers isn't missing many beats, and I think he's got the Cougs in position to make some noise in year one.
All right. Haven't even coached a game. How's that feel?
Undefeated.
What's it been like for you tonight? This is the first of 3 events you'll go to that are similar to this. How's it been being the head coach?
I don't really think about being the head coach. I just think about being a part of something, to see all the support, to see really a community outside of Pullman, right? I said that, and most of the things I say are kind of off the top of the head. And I was wrong about that statement. I said Pullman's Washington State and Washington State's Pullman. I think Washington State's so much more than just Pullman. And I think you can see it tonight. So thanks for the support.
You heard your athletics director, Ann, reference when she was up here. She said, we knew he was a Coug. He didn't even know it yet, but he had it in his spirit. He had it in his eyes. He had it in his demeanor. As you've gotten to know this community, would you say that's pretty accurate with how you describe yourself and what you've gleaned from this community?
Yeah, I think, I felt that on the interview, just the people I got the opportunity to meet. And I was pushed, like Ann talked about that game, like you invest your life into players and winning. And for me, I was coaching my alma mater, which is somewhat unique. and losing in a semifinal game to go to the third national championship in a row. That was hard for me, and then to jump on an interview like that game didn't matter. You almost feel like a sellout, that's the truth. But at the same time, I knew it was the right move. I knew it was the right time. I have an unbelievable staff that I also have to look out for their well-being, because I hired 7 new coaches, and they committed to me as a person. And at the same time, they have an opportunity to, they have to make a decision to impact their families' lives as well. And for this, it was an ability to keep a whole nucleus together that was really important in a very similar community, with a spirit and a national brand to take the next step. And for me, the world looks at, the fall of the Pac-12, and I didn't look at it as that. I looked at it as this is an opportunity to take a national brand, one of the best schools in the country, and have pride in it and do more with it than what was left behind. I don't think I'd be remiss to talk about the tradition of Washington State and the history behind this. I grew up watching it. I watched Pat Tillman in, I think it was 97, play Washington State in Tempe. I grew up watching the brand of Washington State, and so to be able to join it and try to make it better, it was a challenge, something that I was ready for, I was excited about. I could raise my family in a safe community with blue-collar, hardworking people where, you could just go out in the community and be a normal person and drink a Busch Light or a Cougars. So
Amen to that.
I'm a pretty normal person. I don't think any more of myself than what I actually am. I coach college football for a living. Gets a lot of hype. I get it. But I'm a normal person just like everybody in this room, and just try to work my ass off every day to try to be a part of something.
When I hear you talk, I think of one word. I think of loyal. Loyal to your staff. Your opening press conference, I heard you get choked up when you talked about your family and how they've been loyal to the craft. Where did that come from? How was that embedded in you as a child or as a young adult and now as a head coach?
I'm the youngest of 3. I have 2 older brothers. My dad is a police officer. My mom was a teacher. My parents were always involved. My dad was always involved. He wasn't always present because he was always working. So I grew up in a blue-collar household that you get what you get and you have to earn everything. And just as I got older, I kind of witnessed my dad be who he is and not really give a shit about what people think of him. And there's peace in that. I think if you try to appease everybody, you appease nobody and you're miserable. So I kind of just live my life and not really care what people think. Everybody always talks about the hype of this. Like, there's no hype in this to me. This is college football. You're trying to get a bunch of players to play together and buy into it. And I think the more real you are as a person, the more authentic you can speak to people, especially 18 to 22-year-olds. The more you resonate with them, the more you can connect with them. I don't think it's as hard as what you think it is, as long as you're truthful and you push them. I shouldn't say it's easy, but because you're dealing with their emotions and every thought that goes into social media as well. And you kind of balance all of those things. At the same time, you got to be a real person. You got to tell them the truth, and you got to be authentic.
You reference authenticity. There you go.
You guys don't need to clap for everything I say.
There you go. We'll track it. We'll track your analytics. Somebody's out there doing analytics. You've got a
Give it up for Yogi in this suit.
There we go. Thank you.
I don't know if that's Crimson. No, we may have some contenders out here.
Yeah, I know. It's not as sweet as some of them out there. I'm curious for you. You referenced connection, and we're in a transient nature in this game. You add over 30 players, some within the last 24 hours to this roster. An exodus left. How do you compete to create connection and build a culture in year 1 through the first spring football of your tenure here?
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it's a lot of players. I did a count the other night. It's close to 70 new players. And I think that's 70 new to Washington State. Now, I brought 15 with me from South Dakota State and then another 14 that was in our signing class. So there's 29 players right there that know us and know what we're about, and we've been able to witness live and compete. They know who we are, especially the players from South Dakota State know who we are, know who I am, and know that the best players play. And I think the more you're honest with people, the easier it is to just hold people accountable. But I would tell you this, in my experience of coming here, that the core group that stayed at Washington State, were really welcoming to us. Like if you would have saw our first team meeting, it was Bryson Lamb's a D tackle. He's running the music like a DJ. I'm like, what is going on? And I just let them have it. Like I'm all about them players being themselves under the guidelines of the football program and let them have fun. But I would say the culture stems from allowing people to be who they are authentically to who God made them meant to be. And then having a coaching staff that I believe is the edge to create a positive spirit, that they want to come into the building because they want to be around the person that leads them, which is their position coach. And nobody wants them as a player to be as good as they can be more than their position coach. And when you have that and you have a bunch of guys that enjoy working or with each other, I think it's special because our families are close. This coaching staff is really close. Our kids are close. It is just quite a bit different than most places. And that was something that I tried to create at my last spot. And then to bring those people with me was a no-brainer. A lot of people don't do what I did, which is take a new job and then get caught up in the hype of college recruiting and you have to have this or you have to have that. I just really don't give a shit about those things. I think more about who I get to do it with, because to get a player to what you expect him to be and what you want him to be, you give up your life in trying to develop him. But in giving up your life, I get to do it with such great coaches. And you got to invest in people, and you got to do it at a high level. And so for me, to bring the staff was like a no-brainer for me. It wasn't even a thought. And I was blessed to do that. Ann McCoy allowed me to do that. She had talked me at length. Had many opportunities to go elsewhere. I just never did. Most people thought it was like eye-opening that I wanted to bring my staff. And as soon as I got the vibe off of them that they wouldn't bring them, it was over with for me because I wasn't going to sell out on the people that just built one of the best brands in college football and one of the longest winning streaks in college football. So I'm not arrogant enough to think I could do it myself. So it's not just me. It's the coaching staff. It's the support. It's the people. And then to be able to take a staff and a group of players that mean the world to me, to this place, and do it on a national stage and try to compete for a national championship, that was important for me. You only have one opportunity to do this in your life. And we're not going to shy away from the moment. And we have an opportunity to be the front runner in the Pac-12 in a new conference. And I don't care what it used to be. You can't get caught up in the past. You got to be looking ahead. Otherwise, people are going to be chomping at the bit to knock you off. And if we're going to be the national brand, we better be the national brand. It's got to come from the support of the people, too.
And I think you nailed it. I think she was right. You knowing this community for over 20 years now, I do think you were a Coug before you even knew you were a Coug coach. To that point, you said two words there that I know did not go past anybody. You said national championship. You said an opportunity here that is so unique. You shared it at your opening press conference. I'm sure you've shared it with your team. What have you seen in the work thus far? I know it's early to still allow that to be a potential goal and reality for you in this program.
Well, I'd say we have a long ways to go in so many different ways. But if you don't think that you could be a national champion, it will never happen. Like nobody talks about being fourth, right? Have you ever? So I just don't think that way. I just think about being your best and giving your best to each other and being locked into the moment. And you just saw Boise State get into the college football playoff. There's a team that's going to be in the conference. And Washington State has a better brand than Boise State. So there's more 250,000 living alum that have the ability nowadays in this modern era of college football to make a difference in the roster in which you create to be one of the best teams in the country. And so if you can get into the college football playoff, just like the NCAA bracket, you have an opportunity to make a run at it. And for me, that was like a no-brainer for me. You have to have resources, you have to have support, you have to have facilities, and you got to be able to recruit players, and you got to be able to retain them. And if you could do that, you could win. I was just at a place where half our players got offered six-figure deals, and they stayed. They stayed because of the people that were impacting their lives. And it was more than just the coaches. It was a community in itself impacting the players. They just didn't stay because they liked their coach. They stayed because they felt the community. And I think if we can get on a national stage as far as what we can do for our players and use all the resources and the 250,000 living alums, we will be successful. And you could be a national contender. And I don't, you can say what you want. I believe that could happen, but it takes everybody to do that. So,
in the next chapter that we've referenced all night, official will start after this season, right? This is kind of a unique year. You play a team twice. I think you play teams from 9 or 10 different conferences. Is there a different approach to having to do that in your first year somewhere with such a unique schedule that you have?
No, I mean, winning's winning, right? So nobody's going to give a shit if you, go to JMU and you lose, right? So, none of you care that the schedule's different, so I can't care about that either. You just care about winning, so I got to care about winning too.
I do want to end on this note. I do want to end on this note with you because I've been around college football for a long time and have watched a lot of coaches get new jobs. And oftentimes when they come from a lower level of football and they come up, they do not do what you did. And they do it because I feel sometimes they feel pressure. I need to hire this person. I need to hire that person. You said, no, this is what I'm not only loyal to, but this is what I believe will win. I think that is so profound, and the fact that you recognize your role and responsibility to them, the commitment they gave you and their families and how they leaned into it. I know you don't want a lot of applause. You said that earlier, but that deserves a lot of applause because it shows how much you believe in the staff that you brought this year to this team, this university. So I'm curious, can you paint a picture of how tight this group is? Because you've done things with this group that no one else traditionally does in major college football.
Yeah, I think we're close because they have a vision for a player the same way I have a vision for a player, which is taking them from point A to point B and making them so much better than what they could on their own. That's why I got into college coaching. It's the same passion that these guys have. They believe in the development of a player. We're living in a modern era of transfer portal. We're not transfer portal people. It's the truth. I believe in developing high school players, but at the same time, there's the reality that you can't sit and wait. You got to win now. And so right now with this roster, we're forced to take, players in the transfer portal. And I'm not wishing anything but success for the players that we took because I do believe we added them to the roster and they will impact us. But at the same time, I think there's something different about taking a player and developing them from a high school player all the way till they're senior and making them feel a certain way about their experience at Washington State. That's how it grows. You can't always look for an easy fix in the transfer portal year in and year out. You have to develop them and you have to keep them. You also need the money and the resources when you do develop them to keep them. You guys just felt that. So if you want great players and you want them to be developed and you want them to stay Cougs, you can't sit on and rest and think that they're just going to stay these days. The reality is they're not. Not when they're getting offered $500,000. So to sit back and to take a Brock Dew, for example, or a Hillborn, for example, guys that are diehard Cougs that aren't leaving for $1, you can't look at them and say, celebrate them without realizing that they're staying and they're getting actually potentially punished because they're loyal. It's not right by them either. And most of what we've done out of the collective is to support the players that are on the team that stayed committed to us, that deserve it, because I believe in that. And then we've done our best to add key pieces to have success this upcoming year and then to run on the success that we're going to have this year because we're going to be competitive. We're not rolling over for anybody. So for me, it is about winning right now to create a movement of what we can be in a Pac-12 that I believe that we can be a front runner in the Pac-12 and we can make a run at a national championship. Call me crazy or call me a person that believes in winning and what it takes to win. I believe that we have a staff to do that. So to think about our staff and the moves that I made, nowadays you focus less about the X's and O's because you have to develop a roster. You have to keep a roster. And for us not to have to talk about the fine details of coaching as much and get on the same page in every little word, so we're not miscommunicating as coaches, I think it's really important that you keep a staff intact. The staff also knows, just as the players knows, that they have a responsibility to uphold. Ann McCoy trusted me to run Washington State's football program. I'm going to run it. We have to win. So the coaches know that as well.
Tell you what, Coach, I cannot wait to watch you run out onto that field and celebrate your first of many victories. Thank you for your time tonight and your very first night with Cougar Athletics.
It's the Afterglow. That was Jimmy Rodgers, presented by our founding partner, 76, keeping you on the go, 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 so you never miss a beat. That was our 72nd guest interview of season 1, Jim. So grateful for time with you, for time with Jimmy, and for time with 71 other guests. We've been on the road. We've been in LA. We've been on campuses. We've been at Big Ten championship games. We've had media days, and we have done a lot. I would argue too much in year 1, but if you know Jim Thornby or if you know me, you probably know it's often all gas.
No brakes.
Brakes don't exist.
Yeah.
But we're gonna tap the brakes after this episode. The newsletter will be fully active, and thank you all for completing the poll for us trying to get some insights. Go to yaction.com. It's on our homepage. Just give us some feedback if you can. Send us a DM or an email, whatever it might be. Always trying to learn more. But it wouldn't be a completed season 1 before we take a little bit of a summer hiatus and explore time with our families and our lives. If we didn't reflect, if we didn't reflect a little bit on season 1, Jim, you took a quick left turn, man. You finished up at the Pac-12, and a week later, we were rolling. We were at the Elite 11 in the summer, and then we were at Big 12 Media Days in early July. And we haven't stopped until we hit stop on today's episode. What was year 1 like? I'm curious from your lens.
Well, it's funny, and it's fitting that our last guest was a head coach on what is now the future of the Pac-12, where our first guests plural, was with Mike Hamm and Ashley Adamson, as we kind of recapped both the creating and the end of the Pac-12 network with them. So if you go back and listen to those, but we taped that interview with Ashley and Mike, which I think we wound up going like 90 minutes. So we broke it up into 2 episodes. But we did that. I think I was probably like a week off of the job. And ironically, I actually went into the current Pac-12 facility down there at Bishop Ranch to actually record it from there, just because there was work being done at the house and it was too loud. I'm just like, and I called our friend Josh Shisho. I'm like, hey, you got a quiet place that I can just kind of hook up my computer and just whatever. He's like, hey, come on down. So it's just funny how those two episodes, those two things bookend that first season. But yeah, it was super cool. To your point with the Elite 11 and getting to spend time with Pete Carroll down there and spending time with Dylan Gabriel there, which kind of blossomed into, a lot of different things throughout the year with him, both at the Heisman and then him coming to your house, during his pre-draft process, and now watching him, compete for the job in Cleveland. So it's been a really wild ride, but you and I don't know any different after 12 years of the Pac-12 network and Pac-12 conference. So, this is kind of par for the course for us is having that wild ride together.
Yeah, it was wild. I'll say that. It was, whether, front end of the week interview, another interview, get on a plane, call a game ends, do a hit from the booth, get on the plane, write, what would end up becoming one of at least my favorite things of the year, which is kind of emptying the playbook of from the weekend of college football, just writing on these longer flights back home. It was really satisfying. I felt really fulfilled, because I think that we filled a void for a gap year, kind of as the Pac-12 was in transition. where do those fan bases go as Arizona State went on their run and we had Kenny Dillingham on and Marcus Arroyo on, and as Utah stumbled, but we still navigated to make sure that we talked about it, as USC went into new territory, as Oregon went undefeated as number 1 seed. Like, it was fun to watch the schools from the old Pac-12 transition into their new leagues, struggle, find success, find footing, but be in the middle of it a little bit. And I hope that we were that. I don't want to be too dramatic, and I love the dramatic, but like hopefully we were like a little bit of a campfire where he came around and like he was comfy. You got to warm up, and as Dylan went to the Heisman, like the flames were roaring, right? Or last week, our interview with Lincoln Riley, like USC fans, I heard from so many, whether it was at airports or, on social media, where they're like, thank you for that interview. Like, you humanized Lincoln Riley. We get to know him in a totally different way. I hope we were that. I felt that. I'm curious for you, like if there's a conversation or 2 or 3, notwithstanding the first one, because the first one will always be a core memory with you and Mike and Ashley reminiscing, and it went crazy. Our numbers were awesome on that because I think people just loved, Mike and Ash and what they had and
that relationship.
Yeah, all of our relationships. So does anything? Heck, we went to Alabama to interview Kalen DeBoer in Tuscaloosa. Like, does a couple stand out to you as we kind of reflect back here in our final moments?
The Pete Carroll one for sure will be one that stood out for me. Both because from the 2 perspectives, one for you and your relationship with him, and just being in that room where it was such a unique interview where it almost wasn't an interview. It was really just like having the cameras rolling as you guys talked about life. And it wasn't really, this was a time where he wasn't coaching, and it wasn't all like, oh, tell me about your career, that, all the usual questions that, that Pete Carroll would theoretically get in a time like that. And I'm sure that's why he was so open to doing it, is that it's not getting, the questions on that, talking about, this Super Bowl or, what have you. And also through my own perspective of being an Arizona alum, and, when you guys were at SC together and kicking our butt every year and like,
every year,
and just being like, oh man, I hate that dude, And so then to like have that more human, side of it, to be like, oh no, like I like this guy. Like, so it's kind of cool in that respect to kind of, be able to remind yourself that all of these people are people. And when you can kind of step back from, the rivalry of this or what have you, that you get to know them more on a human form, and it's so much more rewarding.
Yeah, that one will always stand out to me too, because I felt in the moment, and I told him this afterwards. I think I said it actually in the interview. Like, I think oftentimes in our life, like if you went back to, I forget the news station in Tucson that you kicked it off with Samantha from where'd you work at?
Where I was an intern? Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Oh, I started as an intern at KVOH, Channel 4.
Yeah, KVOH. So if you went and saw like the news director at KVOH, like there's a world where Jim Thornby becomes the intern again. There's times when I've seen Pete where I can become his assistant again. And I've not interviewed him in probably 15 years when we sat down, because I don't like asking people questions I know the answers to. I don't want to do softball interviews. I'm not trying to grill you, but I want to be curious, And every question I asked him came from the lens of a man at the time who was 42, about to turn 43. And it was just an adult conversation, because I had a lot of curiosities that I probably needed to get answered. And I was just really curious about. And so I asked him though, and I walked out of that really feeling like I was in the pocket a little bit, if you might say. Like I just felt like that's my sweet spot. Like that's going to be fun. Can we replicate that? And as I look to my right in our list of amazing people we have interviewed, because it has been awesome, there aren't any where it didn't feel that way this year. Right. Part of that is the research, of course, and the preparation from you. Part of that is the trust from the other side of a lens, right? Very few of season one's conversations were in person. Yeah. Right? It was Elite 11 quarterbacks. It was Pete. It was Dylan, to your point. It was Miller Moss, like those guys we captured in the summer. But pretty much everybody, other than
DeBoer and Lincoln,
yeah, they're all on Zoom. And if you know Zoom, as we all do, thank you 2020, like connecting on that when you're on the other side asking questions, like it's a decision you make. Like, do you trust the other side? Can you have the courage to be vulnerable? And our community did that. Like, I think of like Nicole Auerbach, talking to her in a conversation around like the seat that she has every weekend at NBC. Like, you felt like the pride. She knew it. She knows what she's doing, and she's impacting many people, many young women, many girls who aspire to be her. That was cool, man. Like, or Todd Blackledge, like talking about, he used to call games when I was playing at Pitt with Ted Robinson, who changed my life. Right. And then guys like Ted, or, you just brought on so many people. Like, I think of Mark Sanchez when he came on. How much fun was that, talking about like, what's it take to really work in the NFL? And Mark and I came to SC together, 4 years together. Like, one of my probably the closest friend I have among people that I got to coach in my career. And so on and so forth. Like, it was really, really a beautiful year. And then you think of new friendships, like Roddy Jones. Like, I go on his radio show, but now he came on the show, and all of a sudden, the guy who called the playoff game, like, away we go. And we're talking about that. So I hope we did what I always try to do with calling games, which is celebrate the game and coach the viewer. I hope we did that in season 1. I think that we did. I think we celebrated the sport of football. We shined a light on things that we wanted to highlight, challenge, question, learn from. And hopefully everybody on the other side, like, took something away. I hope that. I mean, we didn't do, and we will in the future, we could do more X's and O's. Like, I know there's a desire for some of that. We didn't fulfill every desire from ourselves or our listeners, but damn sure we went for it. And I think, Jim, that is the thing that I look back on year 1 while fully exhausted from what we did in year 1. We left it on the grass.
And tried to connect, like, to that point of what was the former Pac-12 school. Tried to connect with people at each of those schools. And if we didn't have someone on from those, I think we probably did have someone from each one of the schools on it, or it's representative of one of those schools. Think about Colorado. We had Brian Howell on, talk about what it was like to cover that team early on in that season. If not, like, have that conversation about what's going on at that schools. Where we've had several conversations in the last couple of months about what's going on at Stanford. Because in the greater college football media, they're probably not talking about those stories, and if they do, they're talking about them without the depth of knowledge about what has occurred at the context of those programs heading into those stories. Does that mean that we're probably not talking about South Carolina and having great context around that? Yeah, probably we could learn a little bit more about that. But as far as the West Coast and about what we originally set out to do with here, I think that there's nobody who covers it better than we do.
Yeah, amen to that. Really proud of what we've done. Things will shift a little bit in year 2. I learned this phrase the other day, which I can't remember right now. Chris Peterson taught it to me, which I need to. No, it's MVP, minimal viable product. The idea is, like, get in the game. Like, it won't ever be perfect, right? But, like, worst case, it's the minimal viable product. So year 1, we'll take stock now over the next couple of weeks of, like, what can we do in year 2? Some things will change. We'll always elicit and yearn for your feedback and appreciate your feedback. What can you expect over the course of the next month? Well, I'm going to do a lot of writing. I feel as though 60,000+ of you read our emails. I'm so grateful for that. I'm going to make sure in this offseason I can give you some more of my thoughts just from writing it out. We'll continue to do some video on social media. We're not going to have another interview. At least I don't plan on it for the next couple of weeks. Take a little bit of a break. You can go see the Paris Musketeers. Jim's going to hang out and got a lot of construction. You got to finish up with that house, brother. Okay. Jim's going to handle that. And then we'll come on back.
Desktop too. Got great pictures and photos and videos everywhere. So
seriously, I can only imagine those folders. But we're not going anywhere. We'll be back for season 2. Can't wait to continue to illuminate the game that we love, share it with all of you. And thank you for being a part of this community. It's a little scary when you step out and do it. It's a little nerve-wracking when you become your own boss to a certain degree. And while you're managing family, other jobs, side hustles, broadcasting games, going for it and getting good feedback just confirms that you're doing the right thing. And I feel that we've done that in year one. So we'll see what happens in year two. I'm going to go on a limb. We're going to get Jimmy Rodgers back on for Washington State. Maybe we'll end up going up there for training camp because I just need some time on the Palouse. Got to get to Fernandez and company. And so big love to him, Bill Stevens and company. Vic all year long, man, editing our conversations. Tanner, our intern, always supporting us. And everybody in between. There's so many people that allow this thing. Carolyn, you all know who you are. Linda, Matt. There's so many people that just have allowed this to happen. Jim, your family, to give you the space to create that studio that you did. Big love to your wife and your two boys, and of course Amy and our sons as well. It takes a village, and we take a lot of weekends away. So thank you for that, and you know that, Jim. And thank you once again to 76 being a great partner in year one. So there it is, our 72nd interview and the final one of season one. It's Jimmy Rodgers, a deep dive on all the things that are happening in college football. I'm sure news will break the minute we hit stop. But with that said, lots of love as always. Stay safe, stay steady. Have an awesome summer. Peace.